Today I'm going to try to draw this viaduct in New England, and right off the bat, my sense of scale and proportion is way off. I started with this big arch on the right and kind of just eyeballed the remaining arches until I reached the spot where I was supposed to include the towery section on the left, only to realize that I didn't have enough space. I hesitate for a few seconds, unsure of how I should proceed, and I decide to essentially start over. For a moment, I seriously considered moving forward with just the arches, like making the whole drawing about that. But because that wasn't my original intent, and it's really not what I would have liked to do, I felt like I'd be making an even bigger mistake if I just cemented myself into my original rushed composition. So yeah, I cut my losses and just started from the other side. But more on that in a second. First, if you're new here, I'm learning to draw while I travel the world, and the number in the title marks how many drawings I've done, and this cumulative practice brings me to today, where I make big mistakes literally right away. But hey, even great artists make mistakes, and that's part of what makes this so rewarding. If, true perfection was attainable, well, that sounds boring. And that sounds like an excuse, but really, I have no interest in being a robot. I'll happily continue along my way, embracing the highs and the lows as I go. And if that sounds interesting to you, then go ahead and subscribe to the channel. Okay, so a huge irony with this drawing is what I spent last night learning about at home. I fell down something of an architectural drawing rabbit hole. Which, on that note, besides the math and the business and the intensive schooling involved, it's always seemed like a cool career to be an architect. But as I fell down the rabbit hole, I learned something about how to accurately measure out in freehand, so no ruler or anything, something exactly like what you're seeing on screen. And it all comes down to diagonals, like diagonal lines. I don't think I can go into the exact details, or it'll take me a lot more than the rest of this video, but basically there's a way to divide squares into 4 quarters diagonally, and that sounds really obvious, and that gives you like the center point, which is of course simple when they're straight on, but much more complex, surprisingly more complex and confusing at an angle. So like perspective and yada, yada, yada. You cross some lines over some points and you get a perfectly proportioned square next to your original one in that perspective. And even not in perspective, even just flat, it actually is a little bit more difficult than you think, making a perfect square in proportion next to an original one. You can then repeat the process ad infinitum and you'll always get it right. Why am I telling you this? Right, so with this, I could have drawn a square for where I wanted the arch to be, or a rectangle or whatever, and then put the shape of the arch inside of it. Use this little method I learned, I kid you not, like 12 hours prior, and I would have come away with 3 perfectly proportionate squares, and then arches, because they're the same shape, you get it, in perfect perspective. Now, that assumes I get the first one correct, or at least close to it, like the size and shape of the first square. And we saw how my first arch went, so maybe all of this was pointless. Maybe it actually doesn't matter. But that's okay, I think. At least now you know that I do sometimes practice a little bit outside of these videos. Although not often. This is where 99% of the magic happens, if that's what you'd like to call it. I won't stop you if you do. Anyway, as you can see, that initial problem has thankfully been fixed, and I've made some headway. The arches may not be literally perfect, but I think I actually got pretty close just by using my eye, which ultimately is what I want out of this anyway. I don't really want to be drawing diagonal lines. Whatever. The tower on the end is okay. I rushed it a bit, especially with the crenellations on top, which is really sad. Outside of these elements, there is endless texture. And I'm sure you noticed, and I'm happy about it. I knew it would be a big deal going into this, so while I wouldn't go as far to say I was prepared, because I wasn't, I think I was eager. I knew it would be a challenge, and I was curious to see how I would manage that challenge. The foliage felt within my grasp. I'm used to doing this kind of thing, yet I still take a pretty minimal approach. But the rocky texture on the beach seemed like a real hurdle, and I was excited to see what I would do with it. I'm happy to say that even though similarly minimal, I think what I did here gets the point across. I guess I should also mention the stone texture of the viaduct itself, because A, it's also texture, but B, primarily, it's a lot more reliant on perspective. And I know I'm always talking about perspective, but I can't stress enough how ridiculous this would look if I didn't ever think about it. Again, I watched all that stuff about how architects work, and it is literally all they talk about. One guy mentioned how, like, kind of immaterial the details can be in contrast to perspective, because if you get it wrong, it's truly impossible not to notice. Whereas details can be overlooked. You don't need to know how to draw or even know what to look for to know that something is wrong if the perspective is. So, on that note, this whole thing was an unbelievable pain in the neck. Even though you're looking at this through a screen, so you don't have to worry about depth, and you see all of the lines in the reference video within the frame of the video and the frame of your screen, still, you might be able to surmise that the road up above is at an incline. So it's moving up and away from me. If you can't tell, that's what's happening. It's not a straight road, but a pretty steep incline. But you'll also notice that that road, from this vantage point, is moving in what direction? Relative to your screen? Correct. From the right to left, even though it's inclining in real life, it's declining on screen. What? Nothing is more confusing than that. But then take away the frame, compare it to nothing but itself, and it's just surreal in real life. It's like I was losing my mind every time I looked up. I even make a mistake with one of my lines, a big one too. Let me know if you catch it. And it's just because I could not get it into my head that just because this road was visibly moving up, and away, that the illusion of depth makes it point down. And that was about enough for me today. I think the drawing actually worked out pretty well, all things considered, but that one little thing drove me nuts. Anyway, so yeah, I like the texture. Luckily, I found my way eventually with the arches, and I tried a few different things again, which is something I'd like to do more often. I don't want to ever stagnate, you know? Anyway, what do you think? Let me know, leave a comment, like the video, subscribe to the channel. I appreciate you for taking the time to watch this one, and I'll see you soon. Thanks.